So in order to start, maybe we start with what is Journeyman? Like, what is the program? What exactly were you doing? What kind of work did you engage in while you were there? Unpack a bit your term, so to speak.
Yeah.
Give them a better picture of what we're talking about.
Well, it was simultaneously like a very well-organized, very safe program, but it was also, like I kind of said, I had 2 weeks of language training, and then they basically dropped me off, and I learned language from all the basically little kids in the area. We'd walk around the thing, and they'd be like, I'd be like, rock, batu, and they'd be like, yes, Mr. JD, that's a rock. And I'm like, bird, and they'd say, yes, that's a bird. That's how I, learned the language just little by little over there. So in some ways, it was a great program. In other ways, you were like out on the front lines. There wasn't another person that spoke English within 100 miles of where I was, like spoke it as their first language. So me and a guy that I went to seminary with, we went over there, and it was fantastic. It was right there. And now that is this being broadcast, or is this being?
No, it's being recorded, but we don't have to.
We don't have to say the place. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, gotcha. It's somewhere in Southeast Asia.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Day-to-day life. What did you find yourself doing day to day? Like in the experience of your time over there, was it organized, structured? How did it all work?
Well, I mean, so at a practical level, like, you sort of learn to survive is kind of what you do. And, we were set up with, we had somebody that was helping us with house stuff and all that. At that point, I was a little bit more athletic than I am now. And so my friends and I, we started this like basketball kind of ministry, I guess you would call it that. But we just every afternoon with the same group of guys. That was what we did. And then in the mornings, we would teach English to their English teachers. And so they get people that were learning to speak English, and so we were able to communicate that way while we were learning the language. That was basically our most of our day, to day kind of activities. But and there was a lot of, you just sort of were kind of. You're just kind of out there. You first, a friend of mine named Scott Logsden, whose daughter's here. He always says that being overseas is like paying down a mortgage. Because you probably don't know about this yet, but when you actually get a mortgage, it's really depressing when you look at the first 10 years because all you do is pay interest.
Yeah, right.
And you don't even pay any principal, but every year you pay a little bit more principal. Well, the first several years that you're on the mission field, that's all you're doing is you're just kind of learning to survive. So we were doing that, but I probably formed about 10 deep relationships. Ishmael was one of them, with people that I shared. I was able to really share the gospel. In those entire 2 years, I only saw 2.5 of them come to faith in Christ. I say 2.5 because 2 I'm sure of. 1 I was definitely not sure of. Right. So, in fact, I'm not even sure if we were communicating the language. I think she became a Christian, but there's no telling. But we also worked a lot with, there were about, outside of our area, there were some believers there, some national believers. And you end up doing a lot of work with them, and because a lot of times what they need is a vision for reaching the people there, because to be honest with you, they're going to be much more effective than we are. So some of my most lasting work over there is with some of the Christians, the Christian nationals there who were still there. We started a couple things that are still going on today over there, just reaching some of the unreached people group that we are part of.
That's excellent. So one of the reasons I asked that question, a lot of the time when we're interacting with students here, particularly students in the college, I think there's this kind of black box confusion sometimes around what you're going to do once you get over there. And so much of the experience on the field is, well, you live life here a certain way. You do things, you have hobbies, you have interests, you have places you go where you meet people and you develop friends and all those kind of things. And that's what you're doing over there a lot of the time too, right?
Yeah, and let me, one of the things we say in missions is there's no transformation by aviation.
That's right.
So you're not going to get sent over there and suddenly become a disciple-making disciple if you're not one here. In fact, why would you pay all that money to go 10,000 miles to be disobedient in a different place than here? So it is an extension of what you do here, but it shouldn't scare you in terms of like, one of the things we do is we plant churches, and so we spent all this time training this guy to plant a church in Greensboro. So we're not talking about Afghanistan, we're talking about Greensboro. Right. And he sent me a text. He was like, moved on Tuesday, unpacked U-Haul, moved into apartments, sitting in coffee shop with Bible open, now what? Like, how do I get this church started? And so, by the way, his church now has 4,000 people in it, so he's doing fine. But over there, it's not like that where you're just like, I walk outside, I can't speak the language, I stare at you're going to get plugged into some existing work there, some things that create relationships. Some of the long-term people over there that have established, and they're actually bidding for you to come.
Right.
There are more requests that are coming from the field than there are people that can, so they're vetting them to say which are the best opportunities that somebody at this stage of life could really thrive in.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Another thing that I think is a prevailing myth that I see is this idea that I'm going to get kind of cast out there and thrown out there alone. And don't mishear me, there are seasons where it feels really alone when you're there. But particularly if you're in a situation like the International Mission Board, there's almost always a team that you're going to join. And the work that you're doing there, you're engaging with others that are further along in the process that help kind of guide you into that work. And you brought up the existence of local believers in the area that you get to engage and work with as well. And so the setting on the ground is not this mysterious, weird task that you're going to do that feels wholly unlike what you're doing here necessarily. It's the people business, right? We're engaged in life in a space there where we're getting to know people and we're learning what it's like to live there, and we're developing the skills necessary, as you say, to survive in that place and even to thrive in that place. And you're learning the language and trying to understand the culture. But as you do that, you're having the opportunity to develop those relationships that become the opportunities for ministry and the opportunities for making disciples, and you're doing it alongside others. And so the experience, it comes with the support, and it comes with the strategy of often people that are veterans in the work or people that are further along in the task. So it's
one of the most liberating things is that you never go somewhere to do something for Jesus. The way I learned it when I was in college 5 years ago was that you are joining Jesus in what he's already doing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this about evangelism here. Evangelism's scary, right? My favorite definition of evangelism is two very nervous people talking to each other. It's scary, but until you realize that God never calls you to persuade, to convict, to win. Yes. He calls you to join him in what he is already doing in somebody's life. Yes. So I feel like my whole evangelism strategy is running a magnet over the sand just to see where God's at work.
That's good.
And so for, in the proverbial airplane where you share Christ with somebody sitting next to you, I'll start 10 conversations and 8 of them will crash and burn.
Man, that's right.
And no pun intended with the plane, but it's just like they will go nowhere. But 2 of them will I'll be like, okay, there's something happening here. And so you think about that overseas too. Stories like Ishmael's, so the others that I would share with you there, you're like, God is at work here.
Yes.
And he raised me up from America to go join him in what he was already doing over here.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to be overwhelmed about because God's already there and he's already doing the work and he's like, just come join me in it.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so let me turn a corner a bit then. You talked a good bit about calling and discerning that call, and you even shared some of your experience about the initial decisions that led to you saying, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to step into that process. After the yes, what did it look like? What was the process of getting from here to over there for you?
Yeah, so I actually did it through Southeastern here.
Okay.
And because at that point, the IMB had a partnership with Southeastern. I don't know if the partnership exists exactly the same, but I know that they still offer something similar to it.
We do.
Because we have a lot of students at our church that are going through this process now. I always say, and I kind of say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not really, if I could be made like czar of the Christian world, where I could just make rules for everybody, I would require like everybody to go for 2 years just to see what God was doing around the world.
Sure.
I call that the Mormonization strategy of reaching the world. Like everybody's got to go for 2 years.
It's real.
But just the experience that it gives you.
Yeah.
The way it opens your eyes. If God calls you to come back here to be a real estate agent or a public school, elementary school teacher, that it is still the best possible way to expand your mind about what he is doing in some of the most strategic places. And while I'm on a roll here, can I just keep going with this?
Keep going, man. Keep going.
So, because I'm really hoping you were asking me how do you eliminate the obstacles that the objections?
That was the next question.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of people are like, well, I got to get my career started.
Right.
And I'm going to get behind because all the, and that there's no guidance counselor that says do these. Okay, so I have 2 things. One's spiritual and then one's very practical. On a spiritual front, Let me ask you the practical first. I'll do the practical first. So on the practical front, I read this article the other day about Fortune 500 CEOs, and a crazy number of them were in the Marines for a very short stint.
Really?
Before, yes. Now, and what they,
All right.
it's not that their military service like gave them a leg up. In fact, in many ways, it put them behind their peers.
Sure.
But it was that kind of character development that took place in the Marine Corps that
All
gave
right.
them the ability when they actually did get into the workforce
All right.
because they knew who they were and they knew where to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that actually is what happens with a lot of people with this. They, those 2 years are very character developing, sharpening your vision. You're becoming a disciple maker. You know, the number one represented group among Fortune 500 CEOs, this will blow your mind, is Mormons. Like if you had to have a single group.
That is fascinating.
And most all of them will say it's because of that 2-year mission of what it does to them. Now, they're not Christians. I'm not trying to say that our mission and theirs are the same.
Right.
In fact, theirs is kind of lonely and weird.
Yeah.
You know, but there's something about that of taking that time in your mid-20s that I'm just like it's amazing. You're not doing it for your career, but I would definitely not say it's a detriment. If anything, it's a positive.
Yeah.
So that leads me to the spiritual thing. The spiritual thing is, you know, one of my life verses, my guiding compass verses is Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and his right, and all these things will be added to you. And what it tells you is that if you'll give to God the first and the best, then he multiplies the rest. So when you're thinking about the rest of your life, why not give God the first and the best of your career? I mean, 2 years is not exactly a tithe because I hope you live longer than 20 years. But it's at least like saying, God, I'm gonna go here in the most strategic place to do this, and watch God Matthew 6:33 you by multiplying everything else in your life. And so, you know, for those reasons, I'm like, if you would let me make rules, which no one ever does. Probably, and that's probably a good thing. But if there was that, I would make that rule for everybody to do it. You know, so I've encouraged my kids to think about it. I'm not sure all of them will, but you know, it's something that I put out there in front of them.
Sure. Well, and there's a reason for you all in the room when we aim the Go Conference at a group. We aim it specifically at college students. You folk are in a spot in life. The majority of you in the room, I'm assuming you're college age. You're right there around it. You're at a spot in life where you can make these kind of real decisions, right? About what am I going to do? I'm at a natural transition phase, and as you do that, putting a practical next step in front of you, like the go-to, either international or North American, Journeyman, if you want to go serve, leverage your life here in the States with a church plant, something to that effect, the benefits, and this is where I want to take the next question, right? The benefits of that for whatever your future ministry is. Some of you, it will be the thing that causes you to realize, I need to plant my life overseas. This is where the Lord would have me serve. This is where he would have me give my life, and I'm going to sacrifice it all here. I'm going to spend it here. Others will have that as an experience that fundamentally shapes and alters whatever it is the Lord has in front of you from there on out. And that's the thing that we want to encourage you all to consider when you look at something like this. And so, last question, we'll go ahead and land the plane. You talked about this a bit. You even shared about it just now, some. The experience that you had over there, and it came out when you were preaching, how much it's been formative in you not being an international missionary, but being a pastor in the States since then. How did that shape and form the way that you think about your pastoral ministry here in the States?
Yeah, so not everybody, and I would be Exhibit 1, is supposed to actually be there, at least at this point. Every January, my wife and I pray, is this the year that you'll send us overseas?
My wife and I do the same.
Yeah. And every year, God has said no, well, at least not this year. He's told me yes about you, though. It's weird. I don't know. No, he every year he said that, but maybe one he'll say yes. But every Christian's supposed to care and supposed to be involved in this. In fact, I can't remember who said it. It might have been John Piper, because most things end up trickling back to him.
Somewhere along the way, John Piper said it.
Your three options are go, send, or disobey. And if you're going to send, you should be every bit as committed as those who go. It's not that they go and they're committed, and those of us who send are just kind of like, you know, we'll look forward to your slideshow. You know, it's that you are actively involved in it, and how better to do that than to have been there and to see it and to be able to have experienced it. I know mission trips are expensive, And listen, there's a lot of really lame mission trips. Having been a missionary, I can tell you, you kind of roll in your eyes, vacationaries that are coming. So I get it. But I also know there's nothing that will set your heart on fire like just seeing it firsthand and praying with missionaries and prayer walking with them and seeing the brokenness and the lostness of the world. And so, absolutely. I mean, do that. You make it available. And if you got a chance to do it for a couple of years, we ask our students this, and I'll just throw that. I know your application is come to Southeastern. That's what you're solving for. Here's one I'll add in addition to that. Sure. Come to Southeastern. But we always tell college students, we ask our college students to give us one summer. We have a thing called the City Project. And several hundred students do it every summer. In fact, we actually use the campus here at Southeastern to do it. And we take them on 3 mission trips, and it's sort of like Missions 101 or Calling 101.
Yeah.
Then from that, we're asking them for 2 years after they graduate. And then from that 2 years, we're asking them to consider a calling for the rest of their life. It's kind of like Amway. We sort of like get you in and sort of little by little.
Get you in the front door and then
get you in the front door. And like next thing you know, you're walking out with a new car, And so but I would say for you, this my kids have done. I've, told all of them that at least one of the summers to devote it to being trained in Christian ministry. My older girls have worked at a camp, Christian camp, and really kind of thrive there. And, some of them will do city projects. So anyway, I would just say that and then consider doing those 2 years. I mean, you are a part, how do I say this? This is probably being recorded. I will get in trouble for this. I say this as a former SBC president. There is not a lot of things that you can be like, man, it's really awesome to be a Southern Baptist. Yeah. There's a lot of things. Yeah. This is one of them, though. Absolutely. Is that you have the ability to go fully funded to these places in the world where you're going to experience. It's like the greatest idea and the greatest program. And there are literally 46,000 churches and however many Southern Baptists that makes up, let's say, actively 10 or 11 million that are giving their money to make that possible for you. And so take advantage of it. It's like the greatest thing, one of the greatest things that we offer. And so don't leave it on the table. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And if y'all hadn't heard that part yet, it's fully funded to do the Journeyman Program through the International Mission Board. That's exceptional. Yeah, so if you all will, join me in giving JD a round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing with us and us getting to hear not only a sermon from God's Word from you, but also getting to hear a bit from your heart about how this program has been an impact on you and just an encouragement for everybody to consider. We really appreciate your time, JD. Thank you.